Welcome to episode 3 of Signals, a Starbold Studios production. I'm your host, Jeremy Ames. That intro song was Not a Stop Sign by Flora Falls, which made number 6 on my Ear for Talent Top 20 Summer Vibes playlist. Anyways, today's episode, the shorter variety, was recorded last week at the HR Technology Conference in Las Vegas, straight from the expo hall. The beauty of basing the content off a conversation from the night before is that it's raw, mostly unscripted, which was my goal when I set out to record this podcast. The challenge is that I was coming down with something, and it was the morning after 12 vendor happy hours, so the audio isn't perfect. However, the topic is vital and directly fits my theme, so let's get into it. Welcome to our latest episode of Signals, coming to you live from the HR Technology Conference 2025. I'm joined this week by Maren Hogan, longtime industry colleague, friend. We've been coming to this event probably for about 13 years, right, Maren?
I would say so. 12, 13, something like that. Unlucky 13.
So it's been another interesting and fun conference, lots of insights. I'll introduce Maren here or give her a chance to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about who she is. She was somebody I've worked with a lot in the past, so tell us a little about yourself.
A couple times. I'm Maren Hogan, the CEO of Red Branch Media, which is a full-service marketing and advertising agency specifically for HR technology. That's how Jeremy and I met. We work together on a couple of companies, and essentially I've just been in this space for a long time, watching what's going on and seeing the evolution of technology and services and trends inside the space. And I think we've both been watching that happen for quite some time.
Yeah, and the cool thing about people like Maren is that not only does she have her own company and so she can talk about the marketing side of things, but as a company leader, you also branch into, no pun intended, into the whole HR space. So that's going to be our topic today. We had a really cool conversation last night, and that was kind of what I wanted to bring to today's podcast episode. So we're going to get into that as well. So
we both still had our voices last night, so it was an interesting conversation. We must have been shouting.
So the topic that we had going on last night, we were at one of our events here for the happy hours, right? We were at Eye Candy, yep. And we had this metaphor going on about, it's all about diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's been a big topic this year as far as kind of programs diminishing or companies going a different direction at this point. And Maren came up with this great analogy or metaphor that you've probably used before of pushing a rock up a hill, kind of to symbolize the amount of effort that had gone into getting that topic to a certain point. And we'll call it somewhere in the 2022 to 2024 timeframe. And kind of what's happened since then is that the rock has fallen down the hill a bit, right? And you've still got to kind of keep it propped up. So maybe go into a little bit more about what that meant and what you were trying to get across with that metaphor.
So I think a lot of people in our space, people smarter than me and far more qualified than I am, have been working on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I guess belonging as well, over the past few years. And I think it really came to light after the events of 2020, and it just kept getting more and more important in the eyes of executives, which was great because we're starting to see people really buy in and realize that having a strong, diverse, equitable company culture was actually better for the bottom line. It was better for the employees. It's better for people, for humans. And then we started seeing people care about it a little bit less because it wasn't so urgent. It didn't seem like anybody was calling for that level of change. And then, of course, we've had so much change happen in the last year that it's almost like pushing that rock up the hill. We were making incremental progress, and now it sort of feels like we're just supposed to let it fall right back down the hill. And that I can't imagine working 100% of my time in that area and watching that kind of progress just disintegrate. It must be so aggravating.
It was I feel like the epicenter of where we got on this topic was I was down at RecFest in 2023 in Nashville, and 90% of the content was about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Some of the greatest speakers, Torrin Ellis and some of the others, like people just their minds being blown in the audience about just how far we'd come. And so I love how it's not just the rock falling backwards, but can we stop it, right? So that's what we want to get into next is, what you're doing right now to stop that from happening.
Yeah.
You actually have taken action to prevent it or to at least slow it down because it's been a really tough year on this topic. And to your point, imagine how devastating it is if you dedicated your time, energy, you felt like you made progress. So tell me a little bit about this resist movement that you've kind of inspired or been a part of. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, the thing is, like I said, there are people that are so much more qualified than I am. Obviously, the closest thing I have to this is being a woman and struggling with some equity stuff. But really what I was thinking about was friends and colleagues that I deeply respect that have been doing this work. And I'm like, I'm in marketing. That's how I can help. So how would I stealth market it, right? The other side, so to speak, they use dog whistles. They use coded language in a way to get their message across. And I was like, well, if these people are sort of feeling like their budgets are being cut or they're being told by their higher ups to abandon certain things that they have spent their lives working on, we can use sort of stealth training. And I called it Resource Excellent and Strategic Innovation Systems Training, which basically, if you read it out, that's RESIST. And it's essentially a group of courses. Like, if you can't do this out loud, here's how you can retain the budget to make your career site more inclusive. Here's how if you have to remove resources from one bucket because your higher ups are telling you to, here's how to implement those programs in a slightly different, I don't want to say stealth, but like more circuitous way, so you don't have to stop that work. Because I can't imagine how frustrating it would be to devote your life to this and finally get executives listening, finally get companies putting budget toward this important work, and then have to just abandon it. And in fact, not just letting it roll down the hill, having it pushed down the hill back in your direction. And so I've talked to people like you and Jerry and Torin and just said, I built this. Please feel free to use it. I don't need to be in charge of it. I don't need to lead it. I'm not the flag bearer, but this is something I can do to help this continue to move forward.
I mean, the fact that you started qualifying that by saying, maybe it shouldn't be me, but why not? Like, I mean, if it's not anybody else taking that initiative on, and it needs champions, right? So why not be you? And I think the fact that you're putting it in the hands of people to either use or not use, at least you're making the effort, right? So maybe it can float that rock down the hill. So
and it's completely free and everybody can access it. I'll send it to you after this so you can take a look. And the goal is to make it easier to do this work, whether we shout about it or we whisper.
So this kind of ties back to the last episode, my first episode, which I had Angela Chang-Samini on, longtime HR leader. We were talking about psychological safety and organizational courage. And it takes a lot of courage to take what you've done and some of the things you're trying to get in the hands of organizations and to actually use it, right? Because there's a lot of fear right now, and who's going to, as you said, stick your neck out and actually make that happen. So how do we make this a reality? Like, what are you doing to take this playbook, so to speak, and get it in the right hands so that there is kind of that move towards keeping the rock in place so it doesn't fall down the hill?
So I think one of the things, like I said before, a lot of people smarter than me, people who've been doing this work forever, and it's one thing to stick your neck out when bullets are whizzing by, right? It's another thing to say, okay, we have this coded stuff. We can give it to each other. We can share it across back channels. I don't know if you recall at the time, but people were even scared of kind of doing recorded calls. They were doing things on Discord and things like that because nobody really knew how big the backlash could be or would be. I think we have a better handle on it now, but for the most part, it's a shared Google Drive. Anyone can share it with anyone. Red Branch Media doesn't need credit. Maren Hogan doesn't need credit. It's literally just there to say, if you're being asked to do X, here's a manual on how to do it without losing all of your hard work and all of the progress that we've made. I would love to say that we can all stand up and be like, absolutely not, this is unacceptable, and I quit if you make me do this. But where does that leave the work anyway?
Right.
So if we have these things that are a little bit more marketing focused, because that's what I do. I deal in words, and I think that this can help people.
So you essentially combine your marketing knowledge with, I'll call it kind of your empathy and your altruism, because like you said, you're not trying to get anything necessarily out of this, but you're trying to help those who, like we said at the beginning, got so close to where they wanted to be and now feel like that's all in jeopardy, and it's been in jeopardy now for a couple of years. So it's amazing that you've taken it this far and that you've done this, and so maybe creating some visibility out there to it as well. So I'll put if you're willing, I'll put the link to it so people can access it. But I think that back to the intent of this podcast, and like the signal is, and this was sort of one of the things that drove me to create this podcast, was just watching some of the backwards motion that we've had. And so that moment last night where you literally were like simulating the rock at the top of the hill, I almost knew in that moment that was going to be this episode. So, and we did it here from HR Tech, which is kind of cool, where we've been hanging out for 12, 14 years. So thank you so much for coming on today, Maren. Conversation, and hopefully we'll see you at the next conference too.
Always.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeremy.